In a world where prices seem to climb higher than the Tower of Babel, we're left wondering, is our hard-earned money turning into dust before our eyes? Today, we're tackling the beast devouring our wallets, inflation. But we're not just crunching numbers. We're embarking on a journey through time, from ancient biblical tales to the grocery store around the corner. This ride might change how you see your daily bread. Let's start with a story you might not have heard before. Picture this: ancient Egypt, a land of plenty, suddenly gripped by a crisis that makes our current economic woes look like a cakewalk. In the book of Genesis, we encounter Joseph, a man with a gift for interpreting dreams. Pharaoh has a nightmare about 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 skinny ones. Joseph decodes this cryptic vision: 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Joseph doesn't just predict the crisis, he prepares for it. He implements a nationwide savings plan, storing up grain during the good years to weather the bad ones. Does this sound familiar? It's like Joseph invented the emergency fund millennia before financial gurus made it cool. But here's the thing: when the famine hits, Joseph's foresight saves not just Egypt but the surrounding nations, too. Fast forward to today. We might not be facing 7 years of famine, but inflation is our modern-day beast, eating away at our savings faster than those skinny cows in Pharaoh's dream. Let's break it down. Inflation is like a sneaky thief, silently robbing your wallet. That $5 coffee you bought last year? It's $5.50 now. Your rent? Up 10%. And don't even get us started on gas prices. But why should we care? We should, because inflation isn't just about numbers, it's about lives. It's about the single mom choosing between paying rent or buying groceries. It's about the recent graduate drowning in student debt as entry-level salaries fail to keep pace with living costs. Remember the widow's mite from the New Testament? Jesus praised a poor widow who gave 2 small coins, all she had to live on, to the temple treasury. He valued her sacrifice more than the large amounts given by the wealthy. This story isn't just about generosity, it's about the value of money. Those 2 coins meant everything to that widow. Inflation hits the poor and middle class the hardest, turning their mites into mere dust. But before we spiral into despair, let's remember Joseph. He saw the crisis coming and took action. So, what can we do? First, let's talk savings. Just as Joseph stored grain, we need to build our emergency funds. Aim for 3 to 6 months of living expenses. It might seem impossible, but start small. Even $10 a week adds up. Next, diversify your income. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we find this gem of wisdom: invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8, you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. This ancient advice rings true today. Side hustles, anyone? But what about day-to-day survival? Let's turn to another lesser-known biblical figure, the Proverbs 31 woman. This powerhouse didn't just manage a household, she was a savvy businesswoman and investor. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. Taking a page from her book, let's talk smart shopping. Bulk buying non-perishables when they're on sale. That's your modern-day grain storage. Meal planning to reduce food waste. You're stretching your mite like the widow. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great, but I'm barely keeping my head above water as it is. We hear you. The struggle is real, and it's okay to acknowledge that. Remember the Israelites in the desert? They complained about the lack of food, and God provided manna, just enough for each day. Sometimes, that's all we can do: focus on today's needs and trust that tomorrow will take care of itself. But here's where we can learn from another obscure biblical character, Bezalel. God gave this guy the wisdom to create beautiful works of art for the tabernacle. In times of scarcity, creativity becomes our secret weapon. Can you barter skills with neighbors? Trade babysitting for home-cooked meals? Offer a service like car washing? or start a community garden. Your creativity is your manna in the desert of inflation. Now, let's zoom out for a moment. Inflation isn't just a personal problem, it's a societal one. In the book of Amos, we see God's anger at those who trample on the needy and do away with the poor of the land. But here's the silver lining. Challenging times often bring out the best in humanity. Remember the early Christian church in Acts. They shared everything they had, ensuring no one among them was in need. What if we approached inflation with that same community spirit? What if, instead of everyone fending for themselves, we created support networks in our neighborhoods? Community bulk buying clubs, skill-sharing workshops, or even local currencies, these aren't just pipe dreams. They're happening in communities around the world right now. You see, inflation isn't just an economic problem. It's a test of our values, our creativity, and our compassion. It's an opportunity to reassess what truly matters in life. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus tells us not to store up treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy. Instead, he encourages us to store up treasures in heaven. Now, I'm not saying we should ignore our financial realities. But perhaps this inflationary period is a chance to reflect on what truly constitutes wealth in our lives. Let me share a story from a friend of mine. Nadine, a single mom of 2, was hit hard by inflation. Her grocery bills skyrocketed, and her rent increased. She was at her wit's end. But then, she remembered a skill her grandmother taught her, canning. Nadine started canning fruits and vegetables when they were in season and cheap. She even taught her neighbors, and soon, they were exchanging canned goods. What started as a money-saving tactic turned into a community-building activity. Nadine found that while her bank account wasn't growing, her life felt richer. Inflation is a formidable foe, but it's not unbeatable. Like David facing Goliath, we might feel small and ill-equipped. But remember, David didn't defeat Goliath by becoming a giant himself. He used his unique skills and a whole lot of courage. So, what's your sling and stone in this battle against inflation? Maybe it's a forgotten skill, an innovative idea, or simply the courage to reach out and build community in these challenging times. Inflation might be devaluing our currency, but it can't devalue our spirit, our creativity, or our capacity to care for one another. We want to hear from you. How has inflation impacted your life? What creative solutions have you found? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's build a community of support and ideas right here. And if you found value in this video, don't keep it to yourself. Please share it with someone who might need this message today. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of modern-day Josephs, preparing for and thriving in challenging times. Remember, just as the Israelites found manna each morning, you have the strength and resources to face each day. Keep your chin up, your mind sharp, and your heart open. We're in this together, and together, we'll not just survive inflation, we'll grow through it. Until next time, keep the faith and keep innovating. Your best days are still ahead.